Well, good morning and welcome to Copernicus. My name is Sarah and I'm so happy you're here today. For those of you who don't know, Copernicus is a Bible study. We meet on Sunday mornings, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for about an hour. Anytime you can catch us, whether it's live or on replay, we'd love to have you. We focus on two specific things here. One is to help you read and understand your Bible. The other is to introduce you to Jesus of the Bible. Not Facebook Jesus, not bumper sticker Jesus, but what the Bible has to say about Jesus. So anytime you can be here, we'd love to have you. Sit back, relax, and we're going to turn it over to Tim.
Well, good morning. Thank you, Sarah. Welcome back to Copernicus. And we are on our third week of our study of the book of Ecclesiastes, Hug and Smoke. And so far, wow, right? I mean, it's a strange book because it compares our lives and the activities that we occupy those brief lives with on the earth as something like a vapor. It has substance, you can see it, it's real, but the minute you try to grab a hold of it, you get nothing. And so the way that the writer in Ecclesiastes uses the word vanity or meaningless is is in this way. It is either something that you can see but when you try to grasp it, you don't get anything. Or it could mean it's something that you can see, but it's hard to understand. So when you try to wrap your mind around it, you get nothing. And so in those two ways, this is what the writer says. It says, meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. We learned that that word is hevel. It means vapor. So it's vaporous, vaporous, right? And so that's the way the book begins. And the way the book is designed is to make us ask why. The author assumes, obviously, that life either has a meaning or it doesn't have any meaning. And if it has a meaning, then life should go a certain way. Good things should happen to good people. Bad things should happen to bad people. But it often doesn't go that way. So if it doesn't go the way it should go, if it has meaning, then maybe it doesn't have any meaning at all, and maybe nothing I do actually matters. And so this is the thinking. He's working through this thought process. And so he says, let's see if there's any way I can find meaning in this brief, vaporous life. And so what he does, he looks at several different scenarios and tries to discover if any of these give him any substance, give him any reason to live. And so he determines that in many of them, it's like chasing after the wind. They may be good, they may have substance, but in the end, you can't hold on to them. They disappear like your life. So today, the teacher's going to look at religion. And so we have a lot to say about this, but let's just jump right in. Ecclesiastes 5 and see what he has to say. Now, you should be in Ecclesiastes 5. We're going to start right in verse 1. Guard your steps when you go to the house of God. So right away, we see where he's going with this. I mean, he's going to the temple. That's where the first readers would have understood this. They would have probably been thinking about the second temple at this point in time. So, and if Solomon wrote it, they may even be thinking about the first temple. Okay? It says, guard your feet, watch your steps when you go into the temple. So right away, he is going to be in God's presence. That's a good thing, right? He says, well, it is good, but it's good unless you're not careful. This is what he has to say. Here we go. Go near to listen rather than to offer the sacrifice of fools who do not know that they do wrong. Okay, so there's some language in here that we have to understand. So in Hebrew world, in the Hebrew language, there's no word for obey like in our world. In Hebrew, the word for obey is listen. So if you think about this like a child, when you say to a child, listen to me, you don't want him just to hear your words, do you? You want him to hear your words and obey them. Are you following along? That makes sense? So you want him to hear your words and to obey them. And so that's what he's saying here. Go near to listen for the purpose of obeying rather than to offer the sacrifice of fools. Now, what is the sacrifice of fools? Well, we'll find that. This is the thing the picture that he's painting. There were vows that you could make at the temple that involved sacrifices. Not necessarily the sacrifice of killing an animal, but it could be an animal sacrifice certainly, but it could be grain or wine or something like that. And so this is all about a vow offering, a promise offering. And so we can't see that in English, but the first readers would have definitely known that. And here's what he says: do not be quick with your mouth, do not be hasty in your heart to utter anything before God. So this is with regards to a vow, okay? So this section warns against rash vows. Therefore, instead of making a rash vow, just saying whatever seems right at the time, listen with the goal of obedience, as opposed to going, well, I promise I'll do this, right? You don't want to do that. That's the speech of a fool, okay? Unrestrained, speaks rashly, no filter, right? And then the writer says God is in heaven and you are on earth, so let your words be few. So you can't take this verse out of context. It looks nice on a pillow, but you can't do that to this, okay? You got to think about the context of the book. Why would he say God is in heaven and you're on earth? Because everything on earth, everything under the sun, is a vapor. Remember that? So you have God is in heaven where things are real and substantive and you can hold on to them. You're on earth where everything is a vapor, including your life. So don't say words that will evaporate as quickly as you will. You following along here? It's kind of cool, right? He's not done yet. He says, a dream comes when there are many cares, and many words mark the speech of a fool. Now, This is a tough one because the way we use the word dream in our culture is completely different than the way they would. So think about this. A dream comes when there are many cares. So if you've had a hard day and you've got a lot of things on your mind, you're not sure if this project is going to get done, or if this person's going to do what he's supposed to do, or if you've got the money for that, right? And what happens? You go to bed and you have dreams, right? Keeps you, it keeps you, it's the product of unfinished business. Okay, but what is a dream? Nothing. You can't hold on to it. Sometimes you can't even remember it when you wake up. And it's the same as the speech of a fool. The speech of a fool is nothing. And in regards to this religious experience where he's in the temple and he makes a promise that he has no intention of keeping, that's the speech of a fool. It's empty. And so dreams come when there are many cares, and many words are the speech of a fool. All of this is vaporous, empty. Okay? And so when we talk too much, make promises that we can't or will not keep, that's just emptiness. And that's what he's talking about here. Verse 4, when you make a vow to God, do not delay to fulfill it. He has no pleasure in fools. Fulfill your vow. It is better not to make a vow than to make one and not fulfill it. So remember, the fool here is the person who makes an empty promise. He says, God has no pleasure in empty promises. Now, in the writer's world, Israelites were never required to make vows. But if they did make a vow, then they had made a solemn promise to the Lord. They had to perform that action and offer that sacrifice. That was what they had to do. So this was usually a free will offering, and it was something that was brought during times of pressure. So maybe their crops weren't growing like they should, and the bringer of the offering might say, maybe I've sinned. And I feel like this is why God is punishing me with my crops not growing. I promised that this sin, I'm not gonna gossip, I'm not gonna lie, whatever anymore. And I'm making this free will offering, and I'm making it in front of people. So the priest would actually write this down and hold them accountable for it. Now this is something that all of us can relate to. If you've ever sat at the bed of someone in your family who's dying or who's very sick, have you ever made a promise to God? Like, if you just make them well, I will wear blue on Thursdays or whatever it is, right? Or I'll go to church, or I'll start reading my Bible. You ever broke that promise? Right? But the promise is not a bad thing. It's only bad if it's empty. Okay? If it's empty, that's the fool's language. Okay? So making a promise to God is not a bad thing. All right. It says, do not let your mouth lead you into sin, and do not protest to the temple messenger, my vow is a mistake. So don't come back to the priest and he says, hey, have you kept your vow? And you go, you know what? I was under a lot of pressure that day. I said some things I didn't mean. That is not good. Okay, this is a rash vow. Doesn't matter how it's made. It's a rash vow. Now the foolish worshiper is like, oh, that was a mistake. This is all happening in the religious arena, and what he is talking about is something that we all understand. We'll talk about that in a second. Here he goes. Why should God be angry at you when you say what you say and destroy the work of your hands? You can't blame God for what you promise God. You can't blame him for that. Don't put God in that position. Then he says this. He says, much dreaming and many words are meaningless. Therefore, fear God. So what kind of dreaming and what kind of words, right? Empty ones. Dreaming is empty. Foolish words are meaningless. So don't rely on dreaming and foolish words. Instead, fear God. So here's where we're at. Religion is not bad, especially the religion that God invented. I mean, it's his idea for sacrifices and the temple and the whole business. So that's not bad. But many of us just show up at church on Sunday morning so everybody can see that we were there. That has no substance. That is foolish and vain, according to the teacher. Some of us are like, we go to church so we can hear somebody tell us how we can get the stuff that we've been dreaming about. The writer says that's foolish and vain. I'm gonna knock the TV over. That's foolish and vain. Don't do that. That's hevel. There's nothing there to hold on to. What should you do? Fear God. Honor, respect, and most of all, in the context, what? Obey God. So, that's religion. Now he's going to talk about wealth. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, we just need to stop here for a second to talk about this. A lot of people get upset when a preacher, teacher, or a Bible person, a religious person starts talking about money. And so there's all kinds of people who think that preachers and ministers only talk about money so they can get rich or whatever. And there's probably some truth to some of that. But that is not true of all preachers. That is not true of all teachers. Now, the truth is, it's a little hypocritical to say that about a preacher. That is his job. You go to work, you expect a paycheck, and you ask for a raise. You're no different than a preacher talking about money, if that's all he's talking about it for, which is to get money. But the reason most preachers and teachers of the Bible talk about money is because the Bible talks a lot about money. And we're going to see, this is a very lengthy piece, and we're going to see what the teacher has to say about money. So let's keep reading Ecclesiastes 5, verse 8. If you see the poor oppressed in a district, and justice and rights denied, do not be surprised at such things. For one official is eyed by a higher one, and over them both are other higher still. Okay, so the first thing we need to know is that this word oppressed is not the best word. Sometimes it's hard to know why interpreters interpret the way they do. It should be extorted. Okay, it's still a kind of oppression, so it's not the worst translation ever. But the idea here is you see people who are extorting the people below them, who are extorting the people below them, who are extorting the people below them, all for selfish gain. And he says, the increase of the land is taken by all. The king himself profits from the field. So there is nothing necessarily bad about getting paid a wage, but when it's abused, right? And that's what he says. He says, whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income. This too is meaningless. And actually, you could read this first sentence: whoever loves money never has enough money. There's never enough. You know people like this. And he says, that doesn't even make sense. That's meaningless. You would think at some point in time you would get enough money, you'd be like, okay, now I have enough. But that never happens, right? And so this is meaningless. This is hell. As goods increase, so do those who consume them. And what benefit are they to the owners except to feast their eyes on them? So here's what he says, and you know this. You ever seen somebody who wins the lottery and all of a sudden all of his friends and family come out of the woodwork to get some of his money, right? So the more you have, the more people who want to be your friends, the more family suddenly wants to be in your good graces, right? And what benefit is all this stuff anyway? To the people who, all you can do is look at them. You can't take it with you, right? Not in the end. And then he says, the sleep of the laborer is sweet, whether they eat little or much. But as for the rich, their abundance permits them no sleep. So people who work hard sleep well because they're tired. Rich people don't sleep at all because they're worried about losing their stuff. So verse 13 says, I have seen a grievous evil under the sun, wealth hoarded to the harm of its owners. And so this is while people on earth, and remember that's what the under the sun means, while people on earth, while they're living, they get everything. They just get. And in the end, they have nothing. They have all of it ruins them. And you know people like this too. The more stuff they get, the meaner they are, right? And that's what happens sometimes. Or wealth lost through some misfortune, so that when they have children, there's nothing left for them to inherit. So on the other hand, you have people who got a lot of stuff. They're going to leave it to their children, but some catastrophe comes along and they lose it all. They make a bad business decision. I have a relative who was a millionaire twice, lost it all, twice, on a bad business decision. So at the end, there's nothing in his hand for him to hand to his family. It says, everyone comes naked from their mother's womb, and as everyone comes, so they depart. They take nothing from their toil that they can carry in their hands. But the example that we just had, where you have a guy who loses everything, a guy who has everything, these aren't abnormal situations. Actually, in the end, you leave the same way you came in, naked and broke, because you can't take anything with you. And when he says this is a terrible thing, right? He said, but this is what we all understand this. At the end, nobody takes anything from their toil with them, which in his world was really interesting, because pharaohs and kings were often buried with their treasure and with people to manage their treasure. You know, it was crazy. And he says, no, we know better. It's all hevel. And he says, this too is a grievous evil. As everyone comes, so they depart. And what do they gain? Since they toil for the wind. They're chasing after things that are hevel. You say, well, my money is not hevel. Yeah, it is. It can go away as fast as it comes. My stuff is not hevel. Yeah, it can. It can burn down tonight. It's all hevel. You can, it's real, it's substantive, it's important, some of it's good, some of it's bad, but in the end, it's all gone. That you leave the way you came with nothing. Verse 17, all their days they eat in darkness with great frustration, affliction, and anger. The wealthy person was miserable their whole life because they knew it wouldn't last. They're trying to figure out ways to take it with them. And consequently, or not to lose it all at least, they're angry and frustrated with the whole business all their life. Well, they experience some pleasure, some joy, but it's always been with the backdrop of, I got to keep my stuff, I got to keep making some more money, I got to do some more, got to get. This is the person, people, I'm clumsy today. You know people like this. They're always angry about money. They're stingy. They're always complaining about taxes. They're always looking for a way to not have to pay as much. I'm not talking about being a good steward. I'm talking about somebody who's slimy and underhanded and is always trying to work in the back door. That's what these people are like. He says, this is what I have observed to be good, that it is appropriate for a person to eat, to drink, and to find satisfaction in their toilsome labor under the sun during the few days of life that God has given them, for this is their lot. So on the other hand, from all that misery and awfulness of collecting wealth or not having enough, enjoy what you have while you have it. Work hard and be content. So this temporary life is too short to make a big deal out of fleeting things, whether you have them or not. Now, I have friends who get on social media and gripe about all the rich people in the world and how it's not fair. And all I can hear when I hear that is that someone's not content with what they have. They keep looking at what other people have and wishing they may have some of that. Verse 19, moreover, when God gives someone wealth and possessions and the ability to enjoy them, to accept their lot and be happy with their toil, that's a gift from God. Contentment is a treasure as much as any of the stuff that comes that they're treasuring. And so if you have things, lots of things, nice things, and you're content with them, then that is a gift from God. And sometimes the rich are richer still because they're content with what they have, and that's a gift. We don't deserve it because it's God who gives the wealth. It's God, in this particular example, who gives the contentment. They seldom reflect on the days of their life because God keeps them occupied with gladness of heart. This is the person who's not worried about when they're going to die or how they're going to die because they have what they have and they're content with it. And they're content with what God has given them. They know who gave it to them. I worked hard for it, sure, but it was God who gave it to me. It's God who gave me the ability to do this. And I am blessed because I can do and I can earn and I have these things. And so they're content. And they concentrate on doing the things that God has given them to do. And they're happy. I've seen another evil under the sun, and it weighs heavily on mankind. So at first it looks like that whatever he's seen that's evil is a heavy burden for men to bear, and some of that may be true, but it's that it's common to men. All men carry this weight, not just some. And here's what the burden is. God gives some people wealth, possessions, and honor so that they lack nothing their hearts desire. But God does not grant them the ability to enjoy them, and strangers enjoy them instead. So this is a weird passage. Remember, what he's trying to do is find out how things work, how they should work, and do they work that way. And he says, look, there's some weird things. Have you ever met somebody who has great wealth and they're not content with it? That's a strange thing, right? Because you would think if I had what they had, I would be content with it, right? You've said that before. If I had that car, if I had that house, if I had that much money. But God gives some people wealth, and he doesn't give them the ability to be content with it. And that's a lesson for us, all right? That's what the writer thinks. It's a lesson for us. And he says, and strangers enjoy them instead. Now, a stranger here is just somebody that's not that person. It could be a family member or somebody else. But the person may be unable to enjoy the fruit of his or her labor due to an unfortunate turn of events where maybe he's robbed or whatever. But whatever the case, he had it and he can't enjoy it. Whether it's he had it and it's gone, or he had it and he still has it and it's still not making him happy. It's making somebody else happy, apparently. And the writer says, this is meaningless. It's a grievous evil. Okay? So it's sick. It's enigmatic. It's a puzzle. Why does this happen? It doesn't seem right. It's confusing. But there's more, because he's not done talking about money yet. He says, a man may have 100 children and live many years, yet no matter how long he lives, if he cannot enjoy his prosperity and does not receive a proper burial, okay, so just think about, we'll finish the sentence in a second. It says, wealth isn't just money. He's like, look, he has everything he wants, and he has 100 children. So in their world, that's the definition of wealth, okay? And in fact, this would describe many Americans in these terms. He says, so if he has all these things and he can't even enjoy a proper burial, I say that a stillborn child is better off than he. Now that's harsh. That's just ugly language. Why would the writer say anything? I mean, why even bring this up? Well, the writer's going to tell us. Here's how he explains it. He says, it comes, that's the stillborn child, comes without meaning, it departs in darkness, and in darkness its name is shrouded. So the child tried to be born, but it wasn't. And he doesn't mean that the child has no meaning. He means the event has no meaning, right? You have this child that should be born, it's not. It's not born alive. Why is that? It did no good for this child to be born because he was born dead, right? And so, and when he says the name is shrouded, obviously we say the name of stillborn children sometimes, but the point is you don't say the name of a stillborn child as often as you say it of a live child, a child who was born alive and is still with us. So it's not often spoken, okay? And then he keeps going. He says, though the stillborn never saw the sun or knew anything, it has more rest than does that man, that rich man who didn't have a good burial, even if he lives 1,000 years twice, but fails to enjoy his prosperity. The stillborn child has more rest than the uncontented man who lives 2,000 years with all of his stuff has. That's strong. And he says, do not all go to the same place? Now, this is not about going to heaven or hell or any of that. This is about going to the grave. Everybody dies. Okay, and we'll actually talk about that some more later, but it says everybody dies. The stillborn child and the guy who lived 2,000 years with all of his stuff, they all died. They go to the same place, to the grave. Okay? And if the miserly rich man never enjoyed the fruit of his labor during his life, his fate's no better than that of the stillborn who never had anything and never had anything to enjoy. In a sense, it would have been better off for the miserly man to have never lived and to have experienced the toil, anxiety, misery of accumulating all this wealth, but never having the ability to enjoy the fruits of his labor. You can see where this is going, right? I mean, this is sad. Does this make sense? No, it makes no sense. You would think that the guy who lived 2,000 years with all his stuff would be the happier, but in the end, he's not. And his rest is no better. In fact, it's probably worse. Everyone's toil is for their mouth, yet their appetite is never satisfied. You may think, well, that's not true about me. Yes, it is. Did you have breakfast? Are you going to have lunch? Are you going to have dinner? Did you eat once today? Will you eat tomorrow? We toil for our mouth because even though I ate today, I'm going to be hungry tomorrow. In fact, I'm going to be hungry when I'm done talking, right? So, I mean, we always eat and we always need it again, right? What advantage have the wise over fools? What do the poor gain by knowing how to conduct themselves before others? So, what advantage does the wise man have over a fool? The wise man has absolutely no advantage over the fool, in the sense that they both will share the same fate. Now, how do we tell the difference in this context between the wise and the fool when it comes to wealth? Glad you asked. Let's keep reading. Here we go. Better what the eye sees than the roving of the appetite. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. He says, it's better to be content with what you see, what you have, than to always crave more by looking around at what everybody else has. This whole business of always consuming and never being satisfied, this whole business of continual longing is emptiness. It's a chasing after the wind, because I'm going to run after the things that I think will make me happy, the things that will satisfy me, and when I get to them, nothing. It's terrible. Whatever exists has already been named, and what humanity is has been known. No one can contend with someone who is stronger. This is a weird verse, but he's saying, look, everything that exists has a name, because in their world, God made everything that exists and he named it. Okay? So, and no human can contend with God because he's a vapor and God's not. And so no human can go, this is what I'm here for. This is my purpose and my fate in life, because he's not here long enough to know. And he can't say, well, I'm going to find purpose in all this other stuff, because that other stuff is just as vaporous as he is. And so a vapor can't go to the reality and go, this is who I am and this is what I'm going to be and this is how I'm going to conduct my life. He can't contend with God. God is stronger because he's real and I'm a vapor, right? It says the more words, the less meaning. And how does that profit anyone? So he goes one more step, and we have this. Saying something doesn't make it true. I can say that I have a red car all day long. I do not have a red car. I have a blue truck. So I can say whatever I want. I can convince people that that I believe it's true. But all you have to do is look out the window and you can see what's true. All the saying of things doesn't make them true. So just talking about stuff doesn't necessarily provide any real benefit. Okay? So saying I'm going to get this, I'm going to have that, I'm going to make my 5-year plan, and this is what that's all fine. But the more you talk about your stuff, the more you're going to recognize that it's not going to last. And you're going to need some more. It says, for who knows what is good for a person in life during the few and meaningless days that he pass through like a shadow. No one knows. Look, people will tell you you need to find your purpose and all that stuff. And the teacher says, really? What good will that do you? You're only going to be here for a minute. What's the purpose of a vapor? Right? Finding your purpose, he says that's meaningless. Now, you may find that very uncomfortable. But your days are a shadow. They're a thing you can see, but you can't grab. So the question is, with all this finding of a purpose, can you really? No. And if you could, would it satisfy you? Also no, right? He says, who can tell them what will happen under the sun after they're gone? Here's why. Because all of the meaning that you muster on your own, all the stuff that you grab to give yourself to give yourself identity right here, after a while, nobody's going to remember that. And so it will be meaningless. It'll be a vapor. It's gone. And if they do remember us, or our achievements, or our contributions, it won't be for long. They eventually won't. So, the teacher has explored both religion and wealth, and they both have their merits. There's nothing wrong with being rich, and there's nothing wrong with being religious. But in the end, are you going to be able to find lasting meaning there? No. They're chasing after the wind. You can run, run, run. You can look good in front of all these people. I'm religious. But in the end, that's hevel. It's chasing after the wind. You're running, you're running, you're running, and at the end you have nothing. I'm just going to tell you, just personally, this is just me and you talking. I find this to be the case because I've been religious all my life, from embryonic stages, okay? I was conceived in a religious family, and I was raised in a religious family, and I've been the head of a religious family. I've done it all. And I'm going to tell you, I grew up very, very poor. I have had lots of money and no money. I'm sort of in between right now, right? But I've had both. And I'm just going to tell you, all of these things, as a personal experience, I find my experience to be very much in line with what I read in Ecclesiastes. So, how does this book make you feel? It's a little confusing, isn't it? You're like, this is in the Bible? This doesn't sound like, you would think he would say religion, yes, wealth, no, right? But he doesn't say that. He says all of it is vaporous. And he's gone through all these things, nature, wisdom, pleasure, time, all these things, and they're all just like gone. Before you can grab a hold of it, it's like gone. So if all this is vapor and nothing I do will be remembered, what's the point? And that is actually the right question. And next week, the writer is going to look at morality. Does morality have something to offer more than these other things? And he's going to spend a very long time on it. And we're going to wrap it up next week when he does that. In the meantime, I don't know if this book does for you what it does for me, because it's a hard book, and it's kind of a weird book, and it's a confusing book. You get one place and he goes, yep, that's all vapor. And you go somewhere else and yep, that's all vapor. But in a way, this book brings me a little bit of comfort. To know that these are the kinds of questions that rattle around in my head all the time. Like, what am I here for? Why am I bothering to be a good person, or to be a religious person, or to be a poor or a rich person, or make money or not make money? What is the point? And so I'm glad that there is at least one book in the Bible that kind of reflects some of the confusion and some of the struggle that I have felt during my life about some of these same questions, about why are we here? Okay? So maybe you find yourself wondering the same thing as me. What is this all about? So next week, we're going to discover what the teacher has to say about morality, and we're going to learn the conclusion of all his musings. And I think we're both going to benefit from that. So you definitely want to be here for that next week. Let me pray with you, okay? Well, Father, we are grateful for your love and for this book. It's a little confusing, and sometimes it makes us a little frustrated because all the things that we work for and all the things that we try to use to identify ourselves just seem like They're vapors. They're gone, gone. And it makes us wonder, where can we find purpose and meaning, and how do we make sense out of this short life? And so as we think about that this week and it rolls around in our head and troubles us a little bit, help it to tenderize our hearts and to make us more open to the gift that you give us through Jesus. And it's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen.